Welcome to the Managing ThinApps with VMware Horizon Bootcamp session. My name is Aaron Black. I'm a Senior Product Manager in the Horizon Group at VMware. My particular focus is on ThinApp management within Horizon. So let's get to our slide content. For a brief review of the agenda, we'll cover the Horizon solution in terms of packaging, availability, and some other details. And then we'll go straight into an architectural discussion. And then I'll illustrate the things that we've referred to at a high level with more of a deep technical discussion and demonstration. So for a quick overview, one thing that's important to highlight up front is that the Horizon ThinApp solution is made available as a soft bundle. So, and one other point of concern with many customers, and I'll just bring up immediately, is that the way that Horizon and ThinApp work together is that Horizon manages ThinApps, but ThinApps are still ThinApps. We don't change anything fundamentally in the runtime or in the packaging process or the excellent things about the ThinApp technology. We don't change that in any way. We simply supplement that with different ways to manage ThinApp packages using Horizon. So availability of ThinApp management is in our Horizon fall release, and that release comes with the release of 3 additional components. 2 of them are from Horizon, and the third one is actually the ThinApp 4.7 packager. So the first 2 are the Horizon Connector, which is an on-premise virtual appliance that the customer can install and use that basically has 2 jobs. It communicates out Active Directory information regarding users and groups, not passwords, but just users and groups to the Horizon Cloud service. That's where we do entitlement and management. The second piece is a totally new component. This is the Horizon Agent. The Horizon Agent lives in the endpoint. So it's a second piece of software that's installed on endpoints which handles the deployment and management of ThinApps using the Horizon technology. We hope you'll come evaluate the solution and give us your feedback. You can visit the trial community via the link that's posted. So to give some context, Horizon Application Manager actually became generally available in May earlier this year. As the Horizon portfolio extends, we'll simply be adding additional app types to manage. So in May, we released the Horizon Application Manager to manage SaaS applications. Primary benefits were single sign-on, self-service, and a unified application catalog, and a rich user experience, whether it was a user on a Windows device accessing a portal, a Mac device using a browser, or on the iPad. And we brought these things together in a manageable platform via one simple admin console that basically did cloud identity, has a cloud identity foundation, offers a centralized console to track application entitlements, and it provides browser access management as well. So that was in May. This fall release will focus on ThinApp management. So we're adding in a particular application type, and that is virtualized Windows applications. There's 3 primary benefit areas, which I'm going to talk in more detail to later. But basically, it's a turnkey deployment for ThinApps through Horizon. Secondly, entitlement is user-based and it's dynamic. And thirdly, Horizon provides reporting visibility. This all comes on the same Horizon management platform, has the same administrative console, so we're simply increasing the scope of types of applications that you can manage with Horizon. So now let's talk a little bit more in detail about this. What exactly is it about ThinApp and Horizon together that make it a good combination? Well, there's 3 primary words: entitle, deploy, and manage. The integration, especially in terms of entitlement, is very significant. Today, when you package a ThinApp, you have the capability to embed in the package certain Active Directory users or groups that can access that package. And part of the security design in that implementation is that that can't be changed by anyone except for the packager repackaging that application. So Horizon actually changes the security model a little bit, because what it does is it makes the ThinApp package subservient to the Horizon agent and thus the Horizon solution altogether. And so when we do entitlement in Horizon, we do it by user and we do it by group. Active Directory, which is very similar to permitted groups, except it's actually made dynamic, and the Horizon agent is what helps to carry that out. So the second piece is on ThinApp delivery. The delivery of ThinApps is a fairly straightforward mechanism. We use basically UNC shares. You create a ThinApp repository. You place your ThinApps in that repository. Then when the Horizon agent pulls those ThinApps down, it's using the Microsoft Bits technology to do that. We transfer the exe and the DAT packages, and the Horizon agent manages that process and makes sure and will display an indicator to the end user that says when the package was downloaded and when it's ready to be launched. The third piece is with ThinApp usage and monitoring and reporting. The Horizon is very much in the middle of communications of a lot of things. So two of the things that it intercepts are application launches and application closes. And so because all that information runs through Horizon, it's very simple and straightforward because it's centralized to run reports and see data about specific users or in general for a particular ThinApp application, how often is it being launched and how much is it being used. So that's a critical element for a lot of enterprises, and the Horizon Admin Console not only makes it visible, but it makes it visible in a very easy to understand format. It's very scalable and doesn't introduce overhead into the end-to-end system. So the customer benefits is you can target ThinApps to users and groups. You can do that dynamically. You can deploy ThinApps to the endpoints, and you can report and audit on them. So now let's transition a little bit and talk a little bit more about architecture. This is the one slide that I have on architecture, and real simply, if you look at the black line that runs vertically on the side that says cloud-hosted VMware service, anything on that side you don't need to worry about. That is the Horizon service. It is VMware owned and operated. It runs in SAS 70 data centers. It's highly redundant. We have an operational staff that is manning that 24/7. And that service is what provides the pages and the functionality of the admin console, which is browser-based, obviously, and what we refer to as the end user portal. I'll show you the end user portal in more detail later, but basically it's a browser-based client to end user applications. Now on the left side, these are the things that are on-premise. Moving from the middle and going out, the VM, the gray box, the connector, is the one component that you need to install on-prem and actually configure. It is an OVA appliance. It's very simple to extract and install. It runs on vSphere. The configuration of the connector, and like many OVAs, is as simple as giving it an IP address, giving it a name, and then there's a web-based UI to take you through the rest of the configuration. Once you've done your prep work and gathered your necessary service accounts and things, you literally can finish installing the connector in 5 to 10 minutes. So it's a very straightforward appliance, and as I said earlier, it has two main functions. One, it talks to Active Directory to get a list of your users and groups. If you're only comfortable with communicating maybe the users and groups in a certain OU, you can easily configure that. The main function that the connector does is directory sync, but it can do that in part. So if you want to do a phased implementation, or if you have a certain line of business that lives under a certain OU, then you're certainly able to only sync those users and groups. The other thing that's important to point out is we do not transfer passwords. We don't need passwords. All we need to know are about the people and about the groups in your Active Directory. And I'll talk more about that a little bit later. So the second primary function of the connector is to transfer metadata about the ThinApp packages that you have on the Windows App Share. Creating the Windows App Share is very simple. It's a UNC path. It's a CIF share. You give it, it can be read-only, and you basically give the connector permissions to reach out and scour that directory. And basically it's going to pull off icons and application names and package names from that app share. Those are the only three things it needs in terms of metadata. So it's going to take that metadata and transfer that out to the cloud-hosted service as well. So you can see the connector is sending out a list of applications and a list of users and groups. The reason it extracts those things and syncs those out on an hourly or weekly basis, whatever you set, is so that in the admin console in the cloud, the administrator can do entitlement activities. So that's pairing, that's creating a relationship between this user or this group and this particular list of ThinApp applications or a single ThinApp application. Now on the endpoint, as I referred to earlier, we have the Horizon Windows agent. That agent is something that installs and it operates as a sys-tray icon. It gives the end user some visual feedback when they're entitled to a new application, gives them a way to click and see if the applications have transferred, gives them a way to click and say sync now if they know that they've been entitled and can't wait for that polling interval. And they're a sync now kind of person, then they can click on that and instantaneously get the latest applications that they've been entitled to. So that's a review of the architecture. And at this point, let's kind of step back from the architecture and just talk about for a few minutes if you want to evaluate this, if you want to trial it, if you want to implement it, what's kind of an overview of the installation, what are the main steps. So to start out with, the first one is to prepare your Active Directory environment. You do not need to do a schema extension. This is not a significant operation. You just simply need to provide the credentials for an AD user that we can use to bind with AD to extract users and groups. You'll also need a credential that has permission to allow the connector to join the domain. The second piece in terms of Active Directory preparation is that we use Kerberos to extract the user and group information. So to do that, you need to create a special AD account that has a service principal name. We have a document that summarizes how to do this. The syntax is a little bit awkward, but to anyone with Kerberos experience, it's going to seem totally normal. But it's a minor operation, but one that you want to look at the manual on how to do. So the second piece is extremely easy. Create a Windows app share, create a read-only file share, create your ThinApp packages, and put them on the share. We'll review this, but that is something very simple and easy to do. The third piece is the Horizon connector. Like I said, it's an OVA appliance, wizard-based configuration. In terms of networking, the Horizon service needs to be able to communicate back to the connector. So you need to have an externally referenceable DNS name. And you need to open port 443 or have that forwarded to that connector. That connector can live with a private IP or you can have it in the DMZ. Either way works, but it needs to have port 443 forwarded to it and be externally resolvable. So once you've done kind of the infrastructure setup here, all you need to do is install the Horizon agent on the endpoints. That can be done via your usual application deployment method. You can do a silent installation with MSI. The other mechanism is the user can actually go to the user portal, and if they click on a ThinApp icon that has been entitled to them by an administrator, we will detect if they have the Horizon agent installed yet. And if they don't, we will prompt them to install that. The user does need to have admin privileges to install the Horizon agent the first time. They do not need privileges as administrators to install subsequent upgrades. So you need to install the Horizon agent. And then the fifth thing is an ongoing operation, and that's really just managing Horizon ThinApps with Horizon Application Manager. So the continual sync of users and groups is something that is set up at an interval that you specify, so it's nothing that you have to do manually. But then you have visibility to entitlements, managing the ThinApps, and reporting on their usage. So at that point, what I want to do is wrap up the PowerPoint content and transition to a demo. We're going to review packaging for Horizon. So just a quick review. It's the same setup capture process you're familiar with, except it has one new screen, and it is minus one screen that you won't need if you put that checkbox in. And basically what we're doing is we're creating a ThinApp package that is a slave to the Horizon agent. Because as I said earlier, the Horizon agent is the authority for the ThinApps. The second piece, or the third piece that we've put into this is we've allowed you to specify a location to put in the ThinApp in case they don't have the Horizon agent. So we've really tried to make the deployment easy. Either the user doesn't have it and they go to the service can detect and deploy, or the user has the package but they don't know where the portal is. And then in that case, they can actually click on the package and then the package will lead them to a portal. And then we'll review populating the Windows application share. Let's quickly go through the VMware ThinApp setup capture process for 4.7. Now we're at the install application. So we'll use 7-zip. And then we'll do our post scan. So everything up to this point is exactly the way it has been in the past. No differences. Now we've finished the pre and the post scan and the application installation. So I'm going to narrow it down to one entry point. And as you can see, this is the new dialog box within the setup capture process. So this is the checkbox that says manage the ThinApp package with Horizon Application Manager. I'm going to go ahead and specify the location of the user portal for this particular organization. And at this point, I'm going to take the defaults and finish out the capture wizard. One thing you will notice is the absence of the authorization dialog box. And that is because we're going to manage this package with Horizon. So we don't need to enter in Active Directory authorization codes into the package. And at this point, I've completed the setup capture process and I'm ready to do the build. So I'll build the same way I would a normal package. And then we'll take a look at the output. So now we see in the bin directory the package itself. Now on this packager machine I obviously don't have the Horizon agent installed. So as an example use case where the package somehow slips out and ends up on a workstation or on an endpoint that doesn't have the Horizon Application Manager, this is what the end user will see. So we'll launch the application, and here the ThinApp will detect that the Horizon agent is not installed. At this point it gives a user-friendly error message, and then the user can click on this. In this case, if the user was a valid user of this organizational instance, then they would know the credentials to log in here with their Active Directory username and password, and then they could click on a ThinApp icon, which would download and install the agent. So at this point, once you have the actual package, let's talk about how to populate the application share. That's really very straightforward. Just a read-only file share, and as you can see, I've already created some applications out here. So the structure is simple. It's whack server name, whack share name, and then you create an application subfolder. This can be named anything you want. So in this case, I've already created a 7-zip folder, and this may be for a different version, but once inside the application subfolder, this is where you drop the exes and the dat files. Now, for deployment, we deploy exes and dat files. For simplicity, if you simply want to get in the process of copying over everything created in the bin directory to that location, that's fine. It doesn't hurt anything to have the MSI variant of the ThinApp in that same directory. In the future, we will support deploying MSIs as well. So it's not a bad idea to go ahead and populate those. So now let's take a demo and look a little more closely at the Horizon Administration Portal and the connector. We'll also take a look at the actual process of entitling a ThinApp with Horizon and look at the two different modes of that, automatic and user activated. Then we'll switch to the endpoint and look at the Horizon agent, some of the sys-tray controls, the different UIs that can be used for launching applications, and some of the details of how deployment and registration work. And finally, we'll look at some Horizon-based monitoring of ThinApps. So now, first of all, let's take a look at the on-prem component, the Horizon connector. I've already configured this, but I just wanted to highlight two tabs for you. One is the Windows App tab. So you can see here what I have is I've configured the connector to talk to a specific Windows Network app share. You can see there's nothing difficult about this. It's a checkbox, giving it a path, and telling it how often to go through that directory and scour for new ThinApps. As soon as you click Save on the initial configuration, it automatically goes through and extracts the metadata for the ThinApp packages. And it takes that metadata and immediately syncs it to the cloud service. The second piece of this has to do with the directory sync, and this is grabbing the Active Directory users and groups. I'll go through this very quickly, but I just simply want to demonstrate that it's very simple and very easy. So you can see here I've pointed it, in my case, to a lab that has a single OU with users. And you can see that it goes through and it actually lists and dynamically lists the users that are on target for this sync. The next thing it does is you can use a name or a location to specify certain groups. In my case, I don't have any groups in this particular use, so I've gone outside and added just domain admins and domain users. And then it takes this information and it pushes it to Horizon. So at this point now, we're going to switch gears. This web admin is actually pointing to the Horizon Cloud Service. And what you can see here is somewhat of a runtime dashboard that lists recent operations, kind of gives you a scope of management, number of users, groups, and applications. And what an IT admin will soon realize when they log in here is that this is exactly their own environment. So these are the Active Directory users and groups for their own environment that have been communicated over via the connector. And we also list specific users. And then also you'll see this applications list is very similar. This is the list of the applications that is populated from the ThinApp share. So you can see here it actually lists the share, the source share. And here is where you can add entitlements. So if you had an existing Active Directory group and you just simply wanted to add this application to that group, you click Add and select that AD user or group. In this case, I've added to a specific user just for simple demo purposes. You also have the ability to specify licensing information. So here you can specify different licensing models and different license types. And you can add a cost. So there's also reporting and role-based access built into this as well. So not only do you have centralized administration, but you have the ability to create roles that do specific activities, such as populate the application catalog, or one that simply does entitlements for end users. We'll come back around and look at the reporting in more detail. But for right now, let's simply take a specific user, or demo user, HCN6, and let's look at the applications. So for this particular user, you can see here are the applications that have already been provisioned and deployed for this particular user. I'm going to add a couple of additional applications, and then we'll see how that works on the endpoint. So all I do is click Add, and I start scrolling through and look for particular applications. I'm going to add Mozilla Firefox. I'm going to choose Automatic, which just means it puts it at the root of the folder, which is very easy for the user to get to. And I'm going to add Notepad++ as user activated. And I'm going to add the View client as user activated. From the end user point of view, you'll see that I have a new sys-tray icon. This is the Horizon agent. So in this case, since I've just made entitlements, I'm going to go ahead and do a sync now for demo purposes. And what you'll see is a balloon tip pop up that reflects the changes that we just made on the Horizon Cloud service. You can see that I added an entitlement for Mozilla Firefox. The Horizon agent did two things. One is it pulled down and actually did a bits deployment of the package, the Mozilla Firefox package. Not only does it do an automatic download, but it also automatically registers, which you likely saw in the lower left, creating an icon for that version of the Mozilla Firefox browser. And because it's a regular ThinReg, it also puts it anywhere else. So it does file type associations, puts things on the start menu, and does all the normal things that a ThinReg operation would do. So from the sys-tray, there's really two UIs into looking at exactly how the users will launch applications. We expect that most Windows-based users will go to a shortcut on the desktop that's automatically created by the agent, and this is a dynamic launchpad then for SaaS applications. If I had provisioned, for ThinApp applications, if I had entitled SaaS applications, they would also show up in here as well. So you can see that we're aggregating both application types into this umbrella. So here you can launch applications the same way as if they would launch from the start menu or a desktop shortcut. There's nothing unusual about that. You can see that we also can create subfolders to accommodate larger suites of applications. For the end user, some of them may prefer a browser-based portal, and in that case, we provided what we refer to as the user portal. You can see here that it does pass-through authentication, and this is using Kerberos. So from here, the end user can also launch applications. So they have a browser-based portal if they wish to use that. The other thing is, as we did the entitlement, you may have noticed that we set two applications to be user activated. And what that means is we populated their application catalog, which is specific to them in their particular organization. And so then to actually use those applications, the user simply clicks activate, and then it actually plants the icon on their Horizon menu, and then it will also update the folder as well. So here we'll do a sync now again, and that will bring down the entitlement, and it will automatically register it, so it will reflect in the Horizon folder as well. Now that you've seen the entitlement using Horizon administration and the deployment using the Horizon agent, let's go back and take a look at some of the information that is flowing through the Horizon portal. This is something that we'll be improving in the near future. But what I want to show you now is the actual data and the auditing level of information that we get. So one simple report that's actually very handy and a lot of times is not easily available to administrators is simply who has access to what application. So in this case, let me pick an application that I've already entitled a user for. Click show. And you'll see here it's just simply a list of users. That list is exportable and can be sent out in these different file formats. So the next piece that we'd like to look at is application usage. Application usage is interesting because it aggregates both ThinApp and SaaS application types, and it reflects the number of users, total number of licenses. And if you have included licensing costs, then it will also show you the total cost or the underutilization costs. So we recommend that as you place your ThinApps out in the application share and they're synced over to your Horizon portal, that you add some sort of licensing cost in there. We don't recommend you do that for the purposes of a license compliance solution. This is more of chargeback or visibility or an internal cost of either the licensing or underutilization of that licensing. The reason is that we don't enforce licensing in this case. What we do enforce is the entitlement. So when you add a user to this group or you remove a user from a particular application, then we do enforce that. So we don't have particularly a license enforcement angle, but rather entitlement enforcement. And in earlier parts of this boot camp, we explained how the ThinApp package is actually protected against being launched if it's not managed by the Horizon agent. So at this point, the other report that I'd like to show you is just overall the auditing level of events that we have. So first of all, I'm going to set it to all users. And let's just take a look at some of the things that are in here. So one, you can see when an application has been entitled for a specific user. And here you see a specific line that says the user actually chose to use this application. So this is good because this gives you a trackbackable event that can actually tabulate the cost savings from having a user specify that they want to use a particular application and, in essence, deploy it to themselves. So we also get SSO events, and we also get app launched and app closed. So with those events and auditing, you can see that it's very simple to generate a report that gives you a graphical measure of application launches, application usage, and some other administratively useful information. So at this point, what I want to do is actually show deprovisioning, because in many organizations, that's just as important as the initial provisioning operation. So in this case, let's just go to a simple app. We won't do it by group, but we'll just see here that we've made an individual user entitlement for a specific user, Adobe 8. So here we'll click Remove and remove this entitlement. So you can see here the balloon pop-up that says that I've been unentitled from the application. And then if we go and look at the Horizon folder, you'll also see that that icon is no longer available. So in this demonstration, we've reviewed the Horizon Administration Portal, the connector, entitlement, and de-entitlement, and also some of the aspects of how to use the Horizon agent in terms of the Horizon folder and the user portal. Thanks for attending the boot camp. I appreciate your time and hope this was meaningful to you.